All right, today we're jumping right into a really high-stakes showdown from the Gospel of Matthew. We're talking about a moment where a single question was crafted to be the perfect political and theological trap. So let's get right into the scene.
So the scene is set in Jerusalem. And verse 15 tells us exactly what's going on. A group of powerful religious leaders, quote, took counsel how they might entangle him in his talk. I mean, their goal wasn't to learn anything. It was to trap him. They were literally setting the stage for what they hoped would be his final, very public downfall.
So how exactly did they build this trap? Well, it all started with a really strange political alliance, bringing together two groups who, were usually at each other's throats.
Yeah, so verse 16 lays out who was involved. On one side, you've got the Pharisees. Think of them as the religious purists, the nationalists who absolutely hated the Roman occupation. And on the other side, the Herodians. These guys were the political insiders, totally in support of the Roman-backed government. Now, these two groups would normally be bitter enemies, right? But here, they've put all that aside for one single purpose, to trap Jesus.
And they start with flattery. And wow, they really lay it on thick. They go on about his integrity, how truthful he is, how he doesn't care about anyone's status. But you have to understand, this isn't a compliment. This is the bait. They're trying to back him into a corner, making it absolutely impossible for him to give some kind of politically safe answer without looking like a total hypocrite.
And then they drop it. Verse 17, the question. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not? Now, on the surface, it sounds like a pretty straightforward tax question. But underneath, it's a brilliant snare, a political and theological landmine just waiting to go off. It was designed so there was no safe way to answer it.
I mean, just think about how perfect this trap was. If he says, yep, pay the tax, he's a traitor to his own people. He's siding with the Roman oppressors, and the crowds would turn on him in a heartbeat. But if he says, nope, don't pay it, well, the Herodians are right there, ready to report him for treason. He'd be arrested for inciting a rebellion. See? Either answer leads straight to his downfall.
But Jesus, he doesn't take the bait. He doesn't step into the trap at all. Instead, he just completely reframes the entire debate. And it all starts with one simple but incredibly powerful request.
So first, in verse 18, he just calls them out, straight up. He sees their wickedness and calls them hypocrites. Bam. He exposes their real motive right from the start. Then, in verse 19, he asks for the proof. Show me the tribute money. He's taking this abstract, tricky debate and making it real, something you can hold in your hand.
So they hand him what the text calls a penny, but what it really was is a Roman denarius. And you got to understand, this was not just any coin. This was the coin used for the tax, and it was stamped with the face of Caesar himself, along with an inscription that basically called him a god. So just by carrying this coin, by using it in the marketplace, you are already participating in the whole economic system of the Roman Empire.
So he's holding this coin, and he totally flips the script. In verse 20, he asks them a question. Whose is this image and superscription? He's forcing them to look at this little piece of silver in their own hands and say out loud what it represents. He makes them acknowledge the worldly authority that they're all a part of.
And their answer, just a simple one-word response, Caesar's. Well, that becomes the pivot point for one of the most famous statements ever made about how our civic and spiritual lives connect.
And then he delivers the legendary line from verse 21. Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. He doesn't just sidestep their question. He establishes this profound principle that completely, and I mean completely, dismantles their entire trap.
And the effect? It was immediate. It was absolute. Verse 22 says they marveled. They were just stunned, completely speechless. Their perfect trap had totally failed. They had nothing, no grounds to accuse him of anything. So what did they do? They just turned around and left.
So let's really break down why this answer was just so brilliant. On the one hand, he's acknowledging that yes, the state, Caesar, has legitimate claims on us. Things like taxes, civil obedience, using the currency, that stuff belongs to the worldly realm. But then he draws a really important line. He says there's this other realm, a higher one, of things that belong only to God. We're talking about our worship, our conscience, our ultimate loyalty.
So, with just one sentence, he managed to avoid being called a rebel against Rome and a sellout to his own people. It's incredible.
He laid out this framework for how to navigate our dual obligations, our duties here on earth and our duties to God. And it's a framework people have been studying and arguing about for what, 2,000 years now?
And really, that leaves us with a question that's just as relevant for us today as it was back then. Jesus gave us the principle, right? But he left it up to us to figure out how to apply it. So in our own complicated world, with all its demands, how do we figure out what belongs to Caesar and what truly belongs to God?